Welcome to Tech Unscripted. Today we're going to be talking about future-proof workplaces. My name is Luke Paddington. I'm a creative director at Cisco. I enjoy opening those windows that show the stories of what our customers are doing with our solutions. And today we got three of them to talk about. We have Ryan from the Windsor Technology Group. We have Sean from Innovation Federal Credit Union. And we have Greg from Northern Kentucky U. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's kick it off by talking about what do you guys do at your companies? Greg, what do you do at Northern Kentucky University?
I'm the Director of IT Infrastructure and Operations, and my role there is to manage the teams that are responsible for the network, the servers, telecommunications for the university. So we're responsible for basically keeping that infrastructure running for the whole school.
And Ryan, yourself, what's your role and what is Windsor Technology Institute?
So Windsor Technology Group is a Cisco value-added reseller. We are a premier integrator partner. We help customers of all sizes with their Cisco journeys from products to solutions and technologies. My role is a pre-sales architect. My official title is Specialty Solutions Architect. That just means I focus on networking and security solutions for our customers.
Sean?
I'm the VP of Information and Cybersecurity for Innovation Federal Credit Union. We are a federal credit union, which means that we are able to operate within all of Canada, rather than just being limited to a specific province. So we have a very large national membership opportunities. And so my role as part of that is to manage all of our cybersecurity posture and everything related to the regulatory guidelines that we need to follow. So my job is to make sure we're aligning with those guidelines and in continually improving our maturity in those guidelines.
65,000 customers across the entire country of Canada. That's no small task, is it? We'll get into that, right?
That's right.
All right, so some icebreakers, guys. You ready? All right, now one-liners, one-worders, rapid fire, okay? What's the first one? If there was one piece of tech that you could not give up, you could not live without, what would be that one piece of tech, Greg?
The network.
The network, all right.
Yeah, I'm going to say internet connectivity.
I'm going to say the same thing, the network, internet connectivity. Can't do without it.
Can't do without it, all right. And, well, what's your biggest tech pet peeve right now?
Internet connectivity?
Same.
Same? Greg?
I'll say changing technology standards. Wi-Fi versions continue to change all the time, so trying to keep up with what the latest requirements are.
So there's good stuff to that, but there's also challenges to that, isn't it?
Well, sure, because things that you buy today may not be relevant tomorrow. And if you're trying to plan ahead and you're trying to plan a budget for multiple years down the road, and you buy something that's, for example, we bought Wi-Fi 6E access points all across campus. Then, a few months later, Wi-Fi 7 is readily available.
Yep.
So we're committed to those 6E access points, and they're going to be great for a long time. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but just the fact that 7 already came out so quickly, and who knows when 8, 8's probably right behind it as far as I know. So just trying to keep up with that technology is a challenge.
And that's something we're going to talk about, because how do you build something that's going to last and be for the future, right? How are we going to build infrastructure, and how do we plan for that to make sure the foundation is there so that we'll be fine?
Yeah.
All right, one more rapid fire. You ready?
Yep.
All right, it's going to be remote, hybrid, or back in office. What works best for your team?
Short answer or long answer?
Well, you're on a campus. You got thousands of students on there.
So we have a combination of everything on our campus. We have some offices that are fully back in the office. We have some offices that are not fully remote, but about hybrid, basically. So we have a large combination of all different scenarios that we're dealing with today.
Okay. How about you? What are your customers?
I would say we're flirting with fully remote and hybrid, right? We have some of our employees are absolutely remote. We have employees all over the U.S., but we're mostly headquartered along the East Coast. But we do have some employees that do come into our office spaces, on a regular basis. So it's leaning more towards hybrid.
And that's what works best for your team right now, for you to achieve what you need to achieve in your business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Being a sales partner, right, especially Cisco focused. Our account teams obviously are out and about at customer locations. From my perspective on the technical side, most of our engineers and things like that are working remote. There's really no reason for them to be in an office. They're either at customer locations doing implementations, or we're having pre-sales meetings over, video conferences or phone calls or whatever it may take to get the job done.
Sean, I think I know what your answer is. Everybody's in Saskatoon, just right there in one office, right?
No. We're actually headquartered out of Swift Current, Saskatchewan, so it's smaller, great community.
Yeah.
We all get together and go down there on a regular basis. But I would say the answer to that question is there is no difference. So technically we do have about a third of our staff that are quote unquote remote, full time, such as myself. But my team has worked very, very hard to make it that it is completely transparent, and for our end users, it does not matter where they are, where they physically are, whether they're in a building or not, makes no difference. The only benefit you get from being in a building is the experience from the community of the other staff.
That's right.
But from a connectivity standpoint, from a security standpoint, it is not any different.
So how would you define your workplace?
Well, I brought my workplace with me today. It's in my pocket. It's my cell phone. So the workplace that we spent a lot of effort to make sure everything is the same, everything is available to all staff. The way that you access information is the same for all staff, whether they're using their laptop, whether they're using their phone. You get the same access, network access. You have the same posture requirements to get into the access. Everything is the same. There's no additional steps. And then they get all the same security, which is, for me, the most important, is that the security that we get remote versus on-prem is the exact same. So we have the days of having to backhaul all of your internet traffic through your data center for the purposes of security and to get insight into what's going on in those endpoints is gone. We don't have that anymore.
And that's what I want to get into next. I want to find out, like, what are the key things you must have in order to enable that to build on. But Greg, talk to me about you. Define your workplace at the campus of Northern Kentucky University.
So we have a very complicated one. Ever since COVID happened, we have not had an official policy for employees at the university to either be on-prem at all times or remote at all times. We have basically, it's been treated kind of like an as-needed basis, or as the work defines your need to be on campus. So for example, I have multiple teams that report to me, and I have one team, basically our network team, that they're on campus 5 days a week because, quite frankly, if a network switch breaks in a closet, they have to go fix it. They can't fix that from home. So we always have to have at least some people on-prem at all times. And we can do some flexibility with schedules that way. But we have other teams that report to me that, quite honestly, they would never need to be on campus. They are a lot of times, and a lot of them do come to campus, but there's really not a need for them to be there because if they're working on virtual servers in the data center or in the cloud, they're never going to touch anything. So I think a lot of it comes down to what's the need of the role of the position, and that's kind of defining what a lot of people are doing nowadays. But we have other departments on campus that they're public facing. They interact with the students, the faculty at all times. They have to be there 5 days a week. So big combination of the different scenarios that we deal with on a regular basis. But kind of throwing a wrinkle into it is the fact that we're a public university. And even though we do get state funding, that's not our sole source of income, obviously, but because of that, we have some things that are dictated by the state that we have to follow. So as of now, the state of Kentucky has not dictated that we have to be back in office at all times, but there are a lot of people that have concerns that that's coming. And that could affect employees and retaining them.
Absolutely, and a lot of universities are struggling with meeting federal requirements in order to continue getting federal funding because they haven't met the requirements for security.
Exactly.
And for you, your students and your faculty and your campus, you mentioned your campus is pretty big and buildings spread out. And in order to have a high density Wi-Fi for your students, it's a challenge, isn't it?
It is.
And students kind of need internet.
It's helpful, sometimes, considering our LMS is in the cloud, of course. So, absolutely. The entire campus is wired, and the entire campus has wireless. And we have, of course, residential buildings as well, where people are living on campus. So that's their home. So there's we have to make sure that all of that is functioning at all times. So. We did have something we introduced last year that's very helpful to the students that live on campus in the residential areas, because we had a big demand for the students living in the residential halls to have basically their own wireless network in their rooms. And it was hard to deliver that with some of the previous wireless options that we had. But we introduced a new product called Splash to our residential halls. And it has been a huge success. It's been up and running for a year. Basically, it gives each student their own private wireless network in their dorm room. We're using that through, like I said, Splash is the product. We're using our Meraki access points to manage that. So it's been a great success for us.
Ryan, what do you think about that and the rollout of Splash and Meraki?
Yeah, that's a common solution we're seeing to increase wireless demand, right? We used to see call it even less than 5 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for a person to have 1 or 2 devices, right, that you carry around. Maybe you have a cell phone, maybe you have a laptop. College campuses are a great example of, right, that number is not 2 anymore. It's, you can figure sometimes 8, 10 devices for one person. That puts an enormous strain on your wireless network if you haven't properly engineered it. And that's the conversations we're having a lot now with customers is, it's not, the role of just rolling out access points today is not what it was 10 years ago. Having proper RF analysis, doing the proper heat mapping, understanding what your loads are in your environment, in your use cases, will dynamically change how you're going to roll out your access points, whether it's quantity, quality, all that stuff. And Wi-Fi 7 is bringing a new dynamic to that.
Let me add a comment to that. With the heat mapping, we didn't have heat mapping when Wi-Fi was installed years ago, long before I was there. And we purchased Ekahau. We did heat mapping of the entire campus, all the buildings. We had 1,800 access points when I started there, and then when we did the refresh, we went down to 1,000.
Yeah.
And the coverage is better. Now, obviously, they're newer, better access points than we used to have, but just the fact that they're placed appropriately, we have the right coverage, it's been a big improvement.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we have conversations with customers about when they're getting ready to do a wireless refresh. Like, guys, before you go spend tens of thousands of dollars on access points, spend short money to save on the long money. And we're seeing the same thing, especially with the more aggressive and powerful antennas in these new access points. We've seen some rollouts cut down by as much as half.
Right.
And that's a huge money savings.
Absolutely. And if we get complaints that, hey, my wireless isn't working really well in this area, we don't, I think the default answer in the past used to be, oh, let's go put another access point
Access
there.
point,
We don't do that anymore. Now we go straight there, we do the heat mapping, and we're like, well, actually, you have good coverage here, but we need to talk about what devices you're using, and maybe you're doing something else that's causing the issue. And almost every time, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So the heat mapping is a priceless thing that you should do for every location that's using wireless.
Yeah, and whether you do it yourself in-house, whether you contract third party, whatever that may be, it's invaluable.
It's worth every penny. You'll save a fortune by doing that, actually.
I want to ask you guys then, how do you plan for this? So a couple of years ago, a hurricane hit Prince Edward Island, and internet went down on the whole island except for the University of PEI. And they had a sudden surge in use. All the students went into the common room, and all of a sudden, normally you have 30 students there, you had 2,000 students there. And they were fine. The network stayed up and it was fine. It's a really big success story. But they didn't plan for a hurricane to hit. How do you guys, what are you building, what are you using to make sure that you are ready for something that we don't know what's coming in 5 years' time? It's not gonna be a hurricane, but it could be a hurricane of AI. You know, like how do you plan? What do you guys set up for that? Any of you answer that question?
Yeah, I'll take that first. So when we do pre-sales analysis for that type of scenario, the hybrid workplace is a perfect example of that, right? You know, natural disaster aside. When you have campuses where you have a hybrid work model, you may have 10 employees in a building on a given day, but all of a sudden you may have 300. So the planning exercise is a little different for that. You tend to plan for the worst case scenario, and then you usually double that, right? Just to play on the safe side, because you can't, from a budget perspective, when you're rolling out these environments, from a cost perspective, you want to go to the well once. Right? I'm going to roll this out. I want to make sure it's robust, but you also need to walk that line of, I don't want to over-engineer anything, but I don't want to under-engineer it either, because that's going to make everybody look bad, and you don't want the network to struggle when you have this big influx of people. And I think you're seeing that now. People are understanding that, especially environments that are going wireless first. That's a huge conversation we're having now. Is nobody wants, wired Ethernet connections at their desks anymore. Nobody has desk phones. Everything's either mobile or it's a wireless laptop like you have on the desk, right? And that's it.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Anytime you make any purchasing decision, you're thinking about what's the lifetime of that product, whether it's hardware, software, whatever it may be, and then what kind of scenario you're going to be in near the end of that life.
Yep.
So that's a big thing that I find for everything that I buy. It's not use case today. What's the use case going to be in 5 years? What's that growth going to look like? What's the worst case scenario? What happens if we went from having people that were remote and they had to go into the office for some reason? So yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Let me a couple of funny stories about that. We took away all wired connectivity in the dorms, in the residential buildings, as part of our wireless refresh. We talked we communicated up front. We worked with our residential areas and we said, you need to communicate to all the students. You're going to get all new Wi-Fi, but there will not be wired access points in your rooms anymore. And as gone over beautifully. There's been rarely have we had anybody ask for an actual network port to be activated, and we don't do it. We just say it's not available. We're a wireless only residential building.
Yeah, I think the generation we're in now, that's kind of normal, right?
Yeah.
Like, people just expect that everywhere they go. Wireless technology is
everywhere.
prevalent.
Yeah.
Everything's wireless, right? So why do I need a cable anymore?
Right, and we're building a new building to a science center expansion, and as part of that, we looked through the blueprints of all the wired access points that they had planned, because facilities had just gone ahead and done standard planning where they said, okay, we're going to put our all wired ports in all these locations, all these labs, and we looked at it and we said, why? It's just not needed anymore. It's like, and then we ended up cutting the number in half for the whole building. So we went from, I think, 1,500 down to 700, basically because wireless is everywhere. It's ubiquitous now.
So from a user wired perspective, I see that. One of the things that I do see an increase from a wired perspective is when we've had some customers get involved with smart building technologies, right? Where now, with you're talking 90-watt PoE switches, they're using structured cabling to do other more interesting things. It could be lighting, it could be HVAC sensors, it could be anything like that, in reducing the load on your AC systems within your building. So it's an interesting dynamic of where do I deploy wired versus where do I not?
Right, absolutely.
Sean, how are you maintaining to do that, and with such vast geographies and differences and stuff, security and planning for that?
Well, it's a little bit different for us because we do have about a third of our staff are remote and kind of all over Canada. So the focus had been, how do we kind of support everybody at the same level everywhere without relying on a specific data center or a specific building.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've seen with our Meraki's that we have in all of our branches, those are what are heavily used. A lot of the staff, if they have the option, they're not plugging in. So funny story is that on the last flight I was on, I overheard two flight attendants that were pretty young talking, and the one pointed at the Ethernet port on the plane, and they said,
that?
"What is this?" And then the other one said, "I don't know." And then I said, "Well, that's an RJ45 port used for Ethernet cables."
Was that English?
And they said, and they went like this at me. And I said, "You know what? It's not important. You don't need to worry about that anymore."
I don't think I've used the network port in my office in 2 years. I stay on wireless. I sit there with my laptop at my desk, and I don't plug in to the network.
Yeah.
It's all wireless.
And I don't have any.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So it's important that you guys you build a workplace that, and this is one of the core questions we had, and they use 3 verbs here I think is interesting. They're asking, how can the workplace adapt? Because it has to adapt. Connect, obviously, it's the core of what we're doing, but also empower so that your students, your people are willing to use it and want to use it, and they feel bought in on it as well, because that makes your job a little easier as well. How can a workplace adapt, connect, and empower people to work from anywhere? Who wants to start with that?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah.
You go ahead.
So yeah, one of the things that I think, and you touched on this earlier in your conversation, right, is when you get to the point where your users don't notice a difference when they're working remotely or whether they're working in the office, that's the perfect ideal scenario, right? It shouldn't matter where they are at. As long as their experience is the same, that's what's important. And I think if you can design properly for that, hats off to you, right? Good job.
Absolutely. So for us, we were kind of in an interesting situation because we had a couple of things. So we were coming out of the pandemic when nobody was really prepared for a sudden kind of work from home. And so there's every company faced this option: do we send everybody back, or do we continue as we were? Now, with that being done initially, there was a lot of gaps in security because so much of it was dependent on being from your building, from your data center. That's where your security was coming from. So what happened for us at the same time is that we had just finished a 5-year journey to become federally regulated, allowing us to open up across Canada. At that point, we looked at it and said, well, now that we're not limited to people working in these buildings, we're not limited to just Saskatchewan, let's hire the best people from all of Canada, anywhere that they might be.
Sure.
So that changed it a lot. And so the decision, was made, we'll hire everybody, we hire the best person. If they're remote, that's great. If they're near one of our locations, that's great. But we have that flexibility now. So my challenge was, how do I extend the same level of connectivity and security to those people
Right.
without having to rely on the traditional methods, having hardware appliances that were tunneling that traffic through. What we did is we looked at a lot of the different options out there and how do we kind of handle both pieces because they're really connected, right? So that was a big thing where you looked at a lot of different products that could provide the security for remote staff, but couldn't provide the connectivity for remote staff, or we'd have to rely on two different products. So we ended up making a purchase for Cisco Secure Access about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So fairly early into it. And when we looked at the other options, it was that interconnectivity. So what we ended up doing is we built out the security side of things. So all of our staff that are remote or on-prem, they get the secure web gateway. We tunnel only the traffic that's necessary
Okay. Yeah.
through that gateway. There's DLP controls that we put in. There's decryption that's in there. There's IDS, IPS. There's malware scanning. There's sandboxing. And now we have that on-prem and remotely. But the other piece of it was about the connectivity. So now instead of going from your kind of legacy, 10 years ago, full tunnel VPN, that security guys always want a full tunnel VPN.
They always, yep.
I know that.
Yep.
A lot of conversations about that.
Oh yeah.
They love that because they want the insight. They want
Yes.
to see They want to see everything that endpoint is doing.
Sure.
They don't need to see that. They don't need that anymore by using a full tunnel VPN. So what we did is we have the software that's gathering the metrics that we need on the endpoints. But instead, what we're doing is we're letting them handle the security on that side. But then we set up the ZTNA options and VPN where necessary for everything else with posture control. So we're not concerned about what are they connecting to, very specific rules based on zero trust. So I need to connect to a SQL server. If my computer ever initiates that call to that specific host name or IP address and that specific port, it does a posture check in the background and it lets me connect through to it.
Yeah.
But it's completely transparent to the end user. And we also keep all of our systems connected at all times back to our domain controllers. So our staff don't actually realize that we've done anything. I've never shared that really to our staff. We've never really communicated any of that out there. But what's ends up happening is that when they're on-prem, they're on-prem, and when they're remote, they're secretly connected back to our data center, and they have just what they need for management, doing password resets, everything that the IT guys need to support them being remote. That used to be a huge hassle. Plus, they have all the security, the things that we care about. And then we've set that all up. So the split tunnel with the private resources, anything we need going through, when the computer makes those calls, whether it's user initiated or behind the scenes, that's the only traffic that goes over. The question I've had is, well, what happens if they don't have a piece of software? What happens if their EDR is not working? What happens, all these different scenarios? What if they're in a place where they're not approved to work or all these things? So we have all those controls in the background that are doing that. So if everything is good, they're connected. If something happens that would cause a security concern, they can't connect anymore.
Yep. Those are great points, right, regarding ZTNA and remote access. We're seeing a lot with that in our customer base, right, becoming the question of how do we make remote access, A, easier for our end users, but also B, more secure. And what you're talking about is exactly the talk track that we use. We've moved on from mapping users to networks, and now we're mapping them specifically to applications. And layer on top of that, increased added visibility into that entire process makes security so much easier, because now we can see what's going on. We understand what's happening when our users are connecting. You layer device posturing on top of that, like you were talking about, and you're increasing your security awareness so much that it makes your application infrastructure that much more secure.
Absolutely. And if you're doing it in the right way, you're not adding any layer of complexity for your end users.
Correct.
And if anything, it should be completely transparent to them. And if you can, even make it easier for them. So that's something that we've done with some of this. So as example, for some of the ZTNA related applications, I never told them that they used to connect to the old full tunnel VPN.
Yep.
And they would connect in and then they'd put in the website and then it would load up. So often what would happen is they're used to visiting the website. They would forget to connect the VPN and they would try to connect to the website. It would give them an error message and be like, oh yeah, I need to go back in and log into the VPN. And it makes me jump through a bunch of hoops to get in there. It's doing all of its own thing, really cumbersome, takes a while to connect, lets them on, and then they're good to go. So now what's happened is And I can see in the metrics in secure access that people are just connecting in, and now they do it. They're not thinking about the VPN. They're not thinking about what they need to do. They've already enrolled into ZTNA. They just go to the website and everything's happening in the background and it just lets them on. So we never actually told any of our staff that we
That's
did
awesome.
that. We
Yeah.
just did it.
Yep, perfect.
I see it as an example of what end users expect nowadays. It's anywhere, anything, anytime.
Right.
They expect to be able to connect from anywhere, and it doesn't matter if they're at home, in the office, wherever they are. Even on a plane, they expect to connect now. There's Wi-Fi on planes now. And then on anything, they expect that they can use their computer or a tablet, their phone.
Right.
Doesn't matter what the device is. They feel like they should be able to connect and do their work on that. And then at any time, they expect everything to be up 24/7. So resiliency in the network is absolutely critical nowadays. So those are the kind of the expectations that end users seem to have nowadays. And I don't think we saw that 15 years ago, but now that is the expectation from them.
So what are the demands that puts on you?
It's 24/7 monitoring, 24/7 people available if there's any issues to make sure that those can be resolved. It also throws some wrinkles into what people used to refer to as maintenance schedules,
Right.
where you could plan to have things down certain times and certain days. Now that's not the case. Everything has to be up 24/7, so you have to plan around that now.
Yeah, I think that the tolerance for service interruptions is almost non-existent
It's
anymore.
very low now.
100% availability, 24/7, 365. It's got to be there.
Absolutely.
And from a design discussion, we have that a lot, and it's interesting to see what customers, what the value of that is to them, right? Because there are costs associated with that
Right.
for levels of redundancy and availability and things, whether it comes hardware or software, it doesn't really matter. And we have these discussions like, okay, yes, we can absolutely do that, but it may come with another comma on the cost to make that happen.
Right.
And for some customers, it doesn't matter. Like,
So-
okay, we have to have it.
Yeah, for our campus, we have a perfect example where something that looked like it was an unnecessary cost ended up saving us tremendously, because we actually have 3 different internet connections onto our campus, 3 different providers. And you would think, well, 1 plus a backup should be sufficient most of the time. But I don't know if anybody saw in the news, but there was a bridge fire in Cincinnati last year. Well, that bridge had the fiber for 2 of our 3 connections going across it.
Yep.
So we lost 2 out of 3 connections, but because we had the 3rd one, we never went down. There was no interruption to service. So it's one of those things where you have to pay for that resiliency and redundancy nowadays, because it's an expectation.
Yeah, and service providers are catching up with that as well, right? I don't think from a redundancy and resiliency perspective, they were there, you know, and now they're playing catch up a little bit to bolster their egress and ingress points, make sure they have availability built into their infrastructure and their environment. Funny story, I had the exact same scenario where I'm at in Maine. There was one bridge in going from New Hampshire to Maine that carried all of the ISPs. Same issue.
Oh, okay.
They were working on the bridge, and
Yeah.
an excavator got a little too excited. And it took out the entire state.
And how long was that down? Because we would have been down for several days.
We were down for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I'm not, from where I was perspective wise, and I kind of joked about it, right? It was quite literally the entire state, because that's the only way infrastructure came in and out of the state.
Wow.
They've since resolved that issue for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But that was an eye-opening experience for all of the telecom providers.
Yeah.
Ryan, I
And-
want to ask you a question about
Sure.
what you touched about with budgets and stuff. So
Yeah.
we talked about that the Cisco Penn One office is like the nirvana for modern workplace, and and they literally built the network into the fabric of the building.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's a high budget, obviously, and an expense. Not everybody did what you did as well. You added 1,000 access points in Northern Kentucky University, 400 switches, right? And you kind of retrofitted it back, and you're making it work. How do you prioritize modernization for people with small budgets, you know, and short project lengths? What's the advice you have?
Yeah, we have the conversations of around cost and value, and those are the interesting discussions, right? Because what you will see a lot of people will focus on the quote unquote cost of a solution. They only look at the dollar amounts. Unfortunately, that's a little nearsighted, right? Because you have to understand the value of that solution is going to give you. You talked about the time it could save you, save your end users, enhance user experience, things like that. How do you put a price tag on that? you can't, right? And that's the difficult part we have is helping customers understand, yes, this may be an expensive endeavor. The value you're going to get out of it is going to outweigh that. And oh, by the way, we're also working at the same time to help you future-proof your environment. That's the important part. This isn't a 1 or 2 year investment for a lot of this stuff.
Correct.
This is a 5 to 7 year investment sometimes.
You have to really understand the criticality of those assets and services, and
Yeah.
make sure that you've budgeted appropriately for
Yeah.
the downtime that you're willing to take on those.
Right.
And so and I'm sure we've all seen that, where somebody has made a decision that based on the criticality of the asset, that they know what that is and they know how important it is if something happens,
Right.
whether that's a security incident from legacy hardware,
Yep.
it's a lack of load balancing or failover,
Right.
where somebody has made a decision not to do that, and it's always come back where then you have the emergency situation and it's always at least 10 times as more expensive
Yeah.
than if you had just
Spent the
spent
dollar.
the money knowing the criticality of that service.
Yeah, there's a thing I go back to with that, right? We have this conversation a lot around everybody looks like a hero on day one when you save a few dollars, but everybody forgets that on day 542 when there's a problem. Nobody cares that you saved $10 on the solution at that point, right? They're all
Right.
whatever it takes to get it fixed, and it's never the same price. It's always more expensive.
I would much rather have somebody not ever notice that they've done something
Correct.
than for them to come back and say, you pulled us out of a fire, right?
Right.
It's like, hey, everything went down and great job, team. You guys got it resolved in only a couple of weeks.
Right.
And now we're back online.
Yeah.
I would much rather have it just never happened in the
Yeah,
first
I don't-
place.
I don't wanna be a
nobody-
hero.
Nobody,
Yeah.
nobody cheer me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should never be heroes.
Right.
Right. If I'm doing my job correctly, nobody will ever appreciate it. And
Exactly.
I'm okay with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've said that a million times to my team. If you're doing a good job, if they don't notice what you're doing,
Right.
because they should notice it. It should be
Right.
all automatic, all built in. But I know it's a cliche, but it's that whole saying of I know you're saying, can you afford it? But can you afford to not do it?
Correct.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't ask. Can
Yeah.
you really afford to not do this? Because
Right.
think about what it'll cost you if you don't and something happens.
Yeah.
So it's one last question before we move on to the rapid fires, and you've mentioned this a lot, and I suspect that was an easy conversation for you to always talk about collaboration and security. Collaboration, security. You mention security every single time you mention collaboration. And in your industry, yes, I get it. A little bit more difficult discussion for you to perhaps, like why do we need to have the wrought iron on the windows for our institution, for our network? It's okay. Nobody's going to bother. It's just exact. How important is that you talk about security, collaboration, and networking? That's the pillar that you have to base your modern workplace on to move forward. Do you believe in that? And how difficult a discussion was that in your planning?
Oh, absolutely. Security is a critical piece of what we do because think of all the students that we've had over the years. All of their information is in our system. All the employees that work there, all the employees that have worked there in the past. Security for all that information is absolutely critical. Right. So once again, it's that question of can you afford to not have security on this? Because if you don't secure the data and you don't secure the information, well, the breach could be tremendous. Right. So we have to make that a priority, and we've been really emphasizing that lately. So we're really trying to increase our security posture.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we do from when we have pre-sales architecture discussions. We lead 100% of the discussions with a security-first mindset.
Okay.
Everything we talk about, doesn't matter if it's networking, collaboration, end-user appliances, whatever that may be, everything is discussed with security first. That used to not be the case, right? Security was kind of a thing you added on at the end and hoped it didn't disrupt what your users were doing, if you were lucky. Today, absolutely not the case. It's first 100% of the time.
Absolutely. We refer to that as shifting left.
Yes.
So as a security person, I need IT people, developers, everybody else to understand my job is not here to make your life difficult, but if you include me at the end, that makes it difficult for both of us. So what's easy for both of us, to help us collaborate, is including us at the beginning and collaborating on what we're doing. And so we can provide whatever level of support that's necessary, whether that's some basic guidelines or a person on your team to work with you directly to make sure that you have what you need to be successful.
Sure.
Whereas in the past, it was very much, I'm going to go to security and say, we've done all this work. We spent 6 months building this out, and it's ready to go. Can you just okay it for me, please? And can I just have your security's approval? Right. Security's job is not to approve or deny anything. It's to assess risk. So outside of what we do from the operational part of security, it's about a risk assessment. It's about everybody understanding if we do it this way or we do it this way, this is the level of risk that we have.
Right.
And so it's never about saying, no, you can't do something. It's about getting that risk under the risk tolerance level for the organization to make everybody comfortable with doing it. My security team and our IT teams meet 2 times a week. We have a shared backlog of work.
Yeah.
We both contribute to that backlog for the work that comes into it, and we both contribute to the work being done on that backlog. On top of that, I also meet with the IT leadership every week, just one-on-one, to have conversations about kind of the larger plans, what we're going to be doing down in the future. And then we have bi-weekly activities where we just go in and say, okay, what should we be focusing on? So service desk people are there,
Yep.
infrastructure's there, architecture, and the security team, all these different teams in there. And so, like, what is something that you think would help from a security standpoint or from something to make our lives easier?
Right.
For us, because we have these federal regulations, we focus on the ones that help increase our maturity with those guidelines.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that anything is ever off the table. So oftentimes it's very simple things like one of my guys spent, in 3 days, he built out for the service desk team that was doing all brand new laptop deployments, 100% manual, like loading an ISO,
Yeah.
installing it,
Yeah.
installing all the software manually,
Yeah.
joining it to the domain, waiting for GPOs to load.
The hours of his life. He'll
Right.
never get back. Yep.
So we took all of that, and one of my guys, because he had the experience with MDM solutions,
Yep.
is he automated all that in 3 days for them, something that they were spending hours per device doing. They said was down to 30 minutes. And now we're very close to making it so we just ship them the device with them actually not even having to set it up again. So one of the things that's really important there is that for them to understand when you go into those meetings is that it's not them there for us to say, these are the things that you can do for us. It's about what can we do for you? How do we make your life easier?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So-
I want to add to your collaboration piece, right? And I think that's incredibly important for today's architectures and infrastructures, because think of 10 to 15 years ago, everybody was in their little vertical, right?
Yeah.
It was the network people and the security people and the application people, the end user people. And you were lucky if they ever talked to each other. Maybe in case something went wrong, then they would talk. Today, that is absolutely not the case, and you're spot on with that, right? If you don't have those collaborations today, because everything is so integrated now, that becomes ultimately important. And if you don't communicate, it's roadblock after roadblock.
I'm going to go to the next section quickly.
Sure.
But I'm going to ask you some quick questions that's related to that. So I love the stores in America that you can go and you can get your milk, you can get your T-shirt, and you can get your toy. So you've covered all the 3 bases you need to do. It's all in one place there.
Yep.
It just makes it a lot easier with my purchasing. It all comes together, it all works together.
Right.
Scale of 1 to 10. How important is that? Is all the 3 are just on the same table? They're all working together. That you can trust and rely on it. Scale of 1 to 10. Security, networking, collaboration. It's there and it's presented and sold for you guys in your work. How important is that to you?
10.
10,
11.
11.
Yeah, 10 for sure.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
makes life a lot
Yeah,
easier,
yeah.
right?
You gotta have it.
I
Yep.
talk with our CISO every single day. We collaborate on everything. It's a partnership, so
Yep.
we
Right.
work together.
Absolutely. I talk to the VP of infrastructure every day. Outside of those meetings, I have conversations directly with all of the analysts, the IT analysts. They just message me,
Yep.
or we just hop in a call whenever they need to. I'm 100% available to everybody all the time, regardless of what else is going on. If that means we put in extra time, they're willing to do it just to have the opportunity to chat. But you absolutely have to do that. But without networking people, without infrastructure people, there will be no security.
Right.
I cannot secure anything without their assistance.
Right.
And so they're as big a part of security as my team is.
Yeah, and it's driving, the 2 things that we see it driving all the time, right, is the mostly end user experience.
Right.
That's the most important thing. Your customers, whether it's an actual customer, your internal employees, whatever that may be, their experience is benefit, and then it's business outcomes.
Exactly.
Right? We want the users to be able to do their job in an efficient and effective manner, but we also have to run the business.
Yep.
And it's still a fine line, right? There's no silver bullet for that. There's still a lot of discussion and collaboration that happens with that. And if that doesn't happen, the wheels fall off pretty quick.
Create workplaces that are magnets. Create
Exactly.
workplaces that are energy efficient, that are ready for what's next, where we're going. I get you. All right, I'm going to ask you guys some rapid fire, and it's 1-word answers. 1 word, not 2. One. Okay.
Okay, we're watching.
All right. One word. I think I'm going to start with you. I think you're going to get this. One word to describe your ideal future workplace. Your ideal future workplace, one word.
Interconnected.
Simple.
Anywhere.
I guess. See? All right. Next one more. What's one piece of workplace tech that you bring to a desert island?
My phone.
A desert island. Starlink.
Starlink. I'd have to say phone as well.
Okay. All right. So last bit of advice, last bit of thoughts from each of you. What's one piece of advice you give to somebody trying to build a workplace that's going to be future-proof? Sean, sorry. What's one piece of advice?
Collaborate.
Meaning what? Collaborate.
Meaning, again, you can do things in a bubble. That's not ever going to be future-proof because you're thinking about the needs of your team,
Yeah.
not the needs of everybody else.
Got you.
And so if you're collaborating with people and you're thinking about the needs that everybody has, that's how you're building something for the future, not for today.
Got you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the importance of understanding your business and what you need to do to be successful, right? That's the important part. You can have all the technology in the world, all the fancy toys, all the shiny objects, whatever that may be. If it doesn't benefit your business and help you function effectively, not worth the spend, right? And I think that's what people need to understand.
Thank you.
Great answers. I'm going to go a little different on this one, say scalability.
All right.
Perfect.
I want to make sure
Good.
that
Good one.
if you start building something, make sure it's scalable.
Automation?
Automation's good too. That's a piece of scalability. Scalability is a generic term that could apply to anything. It's scalable in terms of security because you need to make sure you can secure it in the future as well as now. Can you grow it? If you add 1,000 employees, is it scalable? Automated, can you automate the whole system? So yeah, absolutely make it scalable.
All right, I'm going to go get to work now. Thank you for the advice. I appreciate you, gentlemen. That was very interesting. Thank you very much for another episode of Tech Unscripted. See you next time.